All right, so this video request comes from Karuto in the Discord. Thank you, Karuto. This is the dark side of every birth generation. I'm interested to see what happens when we get to Generation Z.
Generation. Despite being a century old, they had
Let's
issues
talk
that would
about
make
history.
today's youth nod in empathy. Imagine growing up as a young man or woman back then, just minding your own business, and bam! War, pandemic, economic woes, and social upheaval. Sound familiar? World
Yes,
War I was a real party crasher for this generation. Picture this: 70 million people invited, 8.5 million couldn't make it back home, 21 million got seriously roughed up, and 2 million didn't even get to say it's just a scratch, thanks to disease.
terrible.
As if war wasn't enough, along came the Spanish flu of 1918 to 1920, which decided to play a global game of gotcha, with death toll estimates ranging from 17 to 50 million, and some even saying, why not 100 million? After all that fun, the world plunged into economic chaos, giving birth to the Great Depression in the 1930s. This was the golden era of unemployment, poverty, and a general mood of, why even bother? Popular culture, the knight in shining armor, emerged with early cinema and magazines, offering an escape from the dreary reality. Who wouldn't want to forget their troubles with a little black and white movie magic? Women finally got the vote in 1920. About time. New job opportunities sprang up for unmarried women, especially those who, thanks to the war, had become reluctant members of the Young Widows Club. This period also saw the rise of the flapper, a new breed of young women who said, to heck with the old ways, and embraced a lifestyle of rebellion, recklessness, and all-night parties.
That's interesting, man. Like they went through all that harsh reality, and yet they still made it out okay. They still found their own personal identities and still decided, hey, even though things are going bad, let's still have a good time. Hmm, that's hope.
Today, we look back at the lost generation and see resilience.
Yeah,
They survived
I see
war,
it.
disease, economic collapse, and societal shifts.
And it still kept
Some say
going.
their story could offer insight into modern or future challenges. But really,
100%.
it just shows that no matter the era, humans are experts at finding new and inventive ways to say, hold my beer. The Greatest Generation, also known as the World War II generation, these folks are remembered for their heroism, technological innovation, and prosperity. Growing
What do they say? Tough times make strong men, right? So right now, a lot of people will say we're in tough times. So maybe after Gen Alpha, or maybe Gen Alpha themselves will become strong men. Let's see.
up during this time was like living in an advertisement for progress. Imagine being a kid and seeing the radio, telephone, and automobile become as common as teenagers on TikTok. This era was a cultural buffet in America. Literature, arts, music, and cinema all flourished like never before. The golden age of Hollywood was born, and people flocked to the theaters to watch gangster films, music films, comedy films, and monster films. Because nothing says good times like watching a guy in a rubber suit stomp around a miniature city. Oh, and let's not forget the rise of comic books. Superman and Batman made their grand debuts, proving that even during tough times, people love stories about guys in tights. In the music industry, jazz, blues, gospel, folk, and swing jazz all became the Spotify playlists of the day. The radio was the 1930s version of the internet, influencing millions. Americans tuned in religiously to President Roosevelt's fireside chats, where they learned about the news
Fireside
in an
chats.
exciting way, if you consider fireside chats thrilling.
That
When it came
I
to
mean, honestly, to hear the president of the United States sit and tell stories to the public through the radio, that actually sounds like something that maybe should be continued. Why not? Once a month, have the president talk about something personal.
serving in World War II, the Greatest Generation didn't mess around. 16 million Americans served, with 38.8% volunteering and 61.2% being drafted. These brave souls served an average of 33 months, which sounds like the ultimate extended stay. There were approximately 671,000 casualties, a grim reminder that heroism often comes with a high price.
Freedom
As
isn't
of
free.
2023, almost 120,000 of these WELA-2 veterans are still around to tell the tales, proving that they're not just great, but also durable. The Silent Generation. These folks grew up in the shadow of World War II, with their parents witnessing the fall of Nazism and the rise of a new nemesis, communism. Just as they were beginning to figure out adulthood, they were met with a world in social disarray. Thanks, Soviet Union, for betraying those post-war agreements and setting the stage for a 50-year-long staring contest
How could
known as the
they?
Cold War. Unlike their predecessors who believed in shaking up the system, the silent generation mastered the art of keep your head down and work hard. They were the original
Hmm.
quiet quitters,
Where have I heard that before?
diligently working within the system without making a fuss. No dramatic protests or radical revolutions for these folks. They were more about clocking in, doing the job, and clocking out. This generation was heavily influenced by the golden age of radio, which was basically their version of binge-watching Netflix. They also saw the rise of trade unions, the development of transatlantic flight, finally making those vacations to Europe somewhat feasible, and the discovery of penicillin, which was a game changer for anyone who preferred not to die from a simple infection. Baby boomers, the generation that's synonymous with back in my day, and possibly the most famous modern birth cohort. These folks from the 40s, 50s, and 60s sure knew how to keep busy, with 76 million births taking place. That's right, a strong post-war economy and an
That's a
abundance of
repopulation right
confidence led
there.
to a baby boom that made rabbits look lazy. Boomers weren't just prolific, they were economic powerhouses. As a core marketing demographic, they shaped entire industries. From toys to records, if boomers wanted it, companies made it. Meanwhile, luxuries like laundry machines, dishwashers, refrigerators, and telephones became standard household items, letting the average American live like the previous generation's upper class. Who knew cleanliness and convenience could be so chic? Technological advances before, during, and after the war, like plastics, television, magnetic tape, transistors, integrated circuits, and lasers, played a crucial role in improving the standard of
They
the
were 100% playing with technology back then. Like they were so technologically proficient that they decided, hey, maybe we should slow it down because a lot of the things that we're creating, they're not breaking. So who's going to buy more of it? Right. And then companies started self sabotaging in order to make more money.
living, because nothing
Greed.
says progress like a house full of gadgets that occasionally worked as advertised. And let's not forget the cultural explosion. The Boomers era saw the rise of the
The
Beatles,
Beatles.
Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, and countless other artists who defined the soundtrack of a generation. The music was so good, even future generations would have to admit, okay, you guys got that one right. Generation X, also known as the latchkey generation. These kids came home to empty houses, armed with door keys, thanks to the era of free-range parenting, rising divorce rates, more moms joining the workforce, and the newfound convenience of daycare. It's no wonder they became masters of
TV
microwave
dinners.
dinners
Yeah.
and TV marathons.
Hmm.
Dubbed the MTV generation, Gen Xers were sometimes characterized as slackers, cynical, and disaffected. Imagine growing up after the baby boomers' heyday, only to face declining birth rates and a world where birth control, introduced in 1960 and legalized abortion in 1973, became the norm. It's like their parents took one look at the chaos and thought, let's hit the brakes on this whole having kids thing. But wait. The 1965 Immigration Act brought some demographic changes, injecting new cultural and ethnic diversity into the mix. So, Gen X ended up being more culturally rich than ever before. And let's not forget their music. Alternative rock, hip hop, punk, post punk, and heavy metal bands all skyrocketed in popularity. It was a time when you could listen to Nirvana, Run DMC, and Metallica in one sitting and call it a day well spent. Technological innovation was the name of the game for Gen X. With home computing manufacturers like Apple, Commodore, and Atari leading the charge, the world saw the rise of personal computers and video games. The
Technology kept moving
1970s and
forward.
1980s were the golden age of arcades, where quarters went to die and high scores were life's greatest achievements. Then, Nintendo and Atari decided to bring the fun home, and suddenly, everyone was a gamer. Compared to boomers, Gen Xers were far more educated, flocking to colleges in droves. Individualism and entrepreneurialism became defining traits for this generation, leading them to create little things you might have heard of, like Google, Wikipedia, Amazon, and YouTube. Just minor contributions to modern life. Millennials. Millennials were the first generation to grow up with the internet, mobile technology, and social media. They're commonly described as the first global generation, being connected to the entire world. However, they are also described as the unluckiest generation due to their average and slower economic growth since entering the workforce than any other generation in history, as well as them being weighed down by student debt and childcare costs. Millennials were born at the time of declining fertility rates around the world and are having fewer children than their predecessors. Young people of the 2010 were often criticized for having less sexual intercourse compared to their predecessors when they were at the same age in 2010. The unemployment rate in the United States reached a record low at 19%. And these economic difficulties have led to a dramatic increase in youth poverty unemployment, and a large number of them living with their parents. Millennials are also less likely to be religious than their predecessors, though many identify as spiritual millennials. However, as they are often characterized for their digital fluency, diverse perspectives, and a strong sense of social consciousness, due to them being born in a time period where global news and information can be retrieved in seconds. Millennials are very active socially and politically, and not afraid to use their voice. And despite the previously mentioned economic troubles they face, more than 8 in 10 feel confident in their finances, which is reprise of their generally positive outlook in a more complicated world. Generation Z. Zoomers, or Generation Z. They're not all that different from millennials, but there are some key differences that make them stand out in the generational lineup. While millennials were exposed to the internet and smartphones during their formative years
Zoomers were
and had
born
to
with it.
awkwardly stumble through the digital revolution, Zoomers were practically born with a smartphone in hand and a Wi-Fi connection as their umbilical cord. Zoomers grew up amidst a whirlwind of social justice movements, a new and rather entertaining, chaotic era of American politics highlighted by the rise of Donald Trump and the Black Lives Matter protests. Let's not forget the cherry on top, a global pandemic that locked them down and robbed many of the quintessential high school and college experiences. Who needs prom when you can have a Zoom party, right? In the attention and dopamine economy, apps like YouTube and TikTok have transformed not just how information is consumed, but what information gets spewed out. Millennials might have started the whole meme culture as a joke, but Zoomers
They
turned
took
memes
it and
into
ran with
tools
it.
for spreading ideas faster than you can say, okay, boomer.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, that ended pretty quickly. I'm interested to see like what Generation Alpha is gonna do, right? So as a millennial,
Millennials were
uh,
exposed to the
I guess I'm a late millennial. People keep trying to move me into like a early Zoomer thing. I don't think that's for me, right? Because I didn't grow up with the internet. I grew up around it, but I didn't personally get it until I was around like what 11 years old, like not internet but like cell phone. Like I got my first cell phone when I was 11, right? So that really opened me up to the internet. Of course the internet was around, but maybe I'm just a late bloomer when it came to technology back then. But I love to the see the history, what happened back in the day and how does that affect us now and how will it affect us in the future. And as dark as the future looks, and honestly, it looks pretty terrifying. Honestly, it really does. But to know that people were able to go through stuff that isn't exactly like what's going on now, but still rough and tough times, right? To go through world wars and then also go through the Great Depression, right? It takes a lot of resilience. And it's pretty cool to see that, hey, if they can make it, why can't we, right? In a society that's very doomer, there's still a lot to be thankful for. There's still a lot of positivity that can be spread, which is what I'm doing, right? To say, hey, it's dark now, but it doesn't mean it's going to be dark later. It also depends on your outlook in life. If you think everything's going to be down and in the dumps and terrible, that's probably what's going to happen because your mind is very powerful, very, very powerful. And if you look at things in a more positive aspect and not just saying, oh, everything's good, even when it's going bad, You have to be able to say, even though things are going bad, there are some good things that are going on. There are some things to be thankful for, and that can help turn your mood around. And if you can move with a more positive attitude, maybe you can avoid some of the pitfalls that are in life. You're not just blinded by, oh, everything's so bad, and then you just keep going down and down, and then you're just like, man, I give up. You got to stay resilient. You got to keep moving forward. And I'm excited to see what happens into the future, right? You know, if our ancestors can go through disease, war, tragedy, misinformation, corrupt rulers, and they can still come out okay in the end, or at least a little bit better, and then they pass it on to us, we should be able to do the same. And in fact, I think we can do the same. I believe it. I believe we can do the same. We can make life better, not just for ourselves, but for society. And if society is better, then that means everything, at least in theory, should go right for us. But let me know what you guys think. This was a great video. The dark side of every birth generation. This was a good video. Thank you, Karuto, again. Join the Discord if you got videos you want me to check out, react to, and talk about. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good day.